instead of talking so much about my book, which I do think is very original, and I do think that it is one of the first, if not the first, of this type of social horror book, is what we saw happen with, let's say, the Watchmen, the HBO adaptation, and with Get Out, and with Us, and just Jordan Peele, and then things like that try to do that, like Them, or and the times that it's gotten, people have been super off the mark. The reason, I think, is because people saw, there's a difference between seeing what someone does and understanding what somebody does, and there's a huge difference between seeing what someone does and being able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happened is a lot of people saw Get Out specifically, and they thought racist horror. But the problem with that is the focus becomes on the racist part. And that means that the victim of that racism, we have to see that racism like on the page. We have to see that violence. And racism isn't a joke. Like, we literally have a shorter life expectancy. It has real world consequences. It is actual violence, right? So when you think of something as racist horror, as a lot of people got from these very sophisticated, like Watchmen was very sophisticated, Get Out was very sophisticated. And one of the problems is we have had such a lack of representation. And I don't mean presence on screen, I mean representation, particularly behind the camera or behind the desk. We've had such a lack of representation that people are accustomed to this 101 level discussion. And that is not what Watchmen was. That is not what Get Out was. These are not 101 discussions. You cannot come in expecting entry level commentary. And that's how you know who it's for as well. You know who the audience is because they're assuming a level of social sophistication. That you know that the audience is meant to be Black Americans. And if other people hopefully rise to the occasion, I mean, please, that's my hope, is like rise to the occasion, right? But I knew who the audience was by the level of sophistication right out of the gate, immediately. What they were expecting you to know and how you were supposed to be able to conceptualize and contextualize what's happening depends on you having a level of understanding that is not the result of regular American education and like socialization. So they saw that. They, a lot of people did not have the social awareness, the historical awareness, the political awareness, any of that to understand the level of sophistication that was happening. And so you go to the lowest common denominator, which is just, oh, this is about racism. And it's like, I mean, yes, but really? Is that's all you got? And so if you say racist horror, that completely changes it. It completely switches it back to something you can understand, something that's extremely facile, extremely just low rent. And it means that we have to see and ingest and experience the racism to get the horror. And that's what Them is.
Yeah.
The horror,
upsetting.
right? The horror is, watch this thing. The problem with that is that hasn't been horrific to America. That's not horrific to America. That's horrific to us. That's just more trauma to us. Let's remember that lynchings came with postcards. These were entertainment purposes. That if you weren't present, you could buy a picture and keep it. That's entertainment. Okay, so it's only horror to us. And that's how you knew, okay, that, you guys really, really missed the mark because you're just terrorizing us all over again. Social horror is not racist horror. Racism is a part of, I mean, I'm sorry guys, but it's the air we breathe. So if you want to change that, you have to literally like change our entire biome, which I'm all for, by the way. But until that happens, until you undo it, until you untie it from everything that it's tethered to, that's going to be the reality. But reducing it to that means the only way to show what's happening is to show a Black person being completely brutalized, which is not what I'm interested in doing. I think that the type of horror that I like is not gore, not that there is no gore, I can't lie, but it's not, body horror is a little bit different, but gore isn't scary to me. You're intentionally upsetting me in the moment. You're showing me something you know is going to be upsetting in the moment. But once that moment is over, the intensity of that goes away because it's an implanted image. You painted the entire image for me, right? The type of horror that I have always liked has that social psychological aspect to it, which is you are depending on me filling in the blanks. And because of that, you're not as explicit. You show me very strategically impactful elements of it, knowing what it's going to trigger because you know the culture that I come out of, you know the society that I'm familiar with. Because of that, you make it a collaboration. That becomes personal. That image is personal to me. That horror is personal to me. I can't shake it as easily because I helped you. I helped you in creating it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think what people who got off on the wrong track and were like, oh, okay, I'm gonna try and replicate this thing, they focused on what, if you look at things like Get Out, is only like the last 15 minutes of the movie. Right. You don't get to the explicit stuff until you've worked through some stuff. Like, right. You know, you have to earn that. So I really enjoy the kind of horror, the social horror that is very contextual. It requires the audience participation. It requires your awareness, a certain amount of awareness. And that to me means that it's going to hopefully be troubling for a lot longer